Hi, everybody. It's another opportunity for Cristina and I to come to you, and we've got a great topic we want to talk about. But first, before we do that, Cristina, what did you have for dinner tonight?
Oh, calling me out. I was eating a mini ice cream cone when
Yes,
we
I
logged
noticed that.
on to get my blood sugar up enough because I have been very busy today. So
And
I had two. I'll admit it. I'll complain. I'll
there you
confess.
go.
I had two mini ice cream cones.
You're going to be so fired up for this. And like I told you, I confess that what I had for lunch was an ice cream.
Oh yeah.
So we are ice creamed, loaded, and ready to have a great conversation. So I enjoy this. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So what's been going on, and how do we want to go about this tonight?
So first of all, that's the best part of being an adult is being able to eat ice cream for your meal and not have to answer to anybody.
Yes.
So I'm claiming that. I think
So
we're talking.
anybody
What?
young, just keep that in mind. Hang in there, because there will be
Right.
a time when you can eat ice cream whenever you want, right?
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's too often. But so we were talking earlier, we're approaching Easter, that we should talk about the resurrection,
Yeah,
right? But there's so
absolutely.
much to talk about when it comes to the resurrection, what it means, what happened, all of this stuff. And my question, when I first, people ask me even know, how do we even know that? How do we even know that it happened? That's like we're resurrected from the dead. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. And like you said, I mean, I think this is like such the pillar of Christian faith. I mean, we put so much weight on this as a key thing. And the place that I go originally is into the scriptures to look for passages of scripture that talk about the resurrection. And obviously, the first four books, the Gospels in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all kind of crescendo to the death and resurrection of Jesus. And even Paul talks a little bit about some of the ways that Jesus, kind of his appearances. So there's a lot of stuff to deal with. And for us, I think it's good to kind of dig deep into that. And it gives us our foundation for our faith, is that we can trust that this was a historical fact that truly happened. It's not, some myth. This is something that we base our faith on as something history. I know that's something you and I talked about, is that there's something that's a key for us, isn't it?
Right. I think a lot of people have set out to kind of prove, disprove, like, you can go on, of course, on the internet and get 1,000 different things that prove, disprove, but like a lot of people have gone on this quest to prove the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. I mean, we talked about The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, which is a great movie. I'm not a book reader, but it's a good book too, I'm sure. But the movie's a star-studded cast. It's a Hollywood movie. It's not, I mean, it's sound to his book, and he's a pastor now, but he was a Nobel Prize winning author, and he set out to disprove Christianity, and in doing so ended up proving it. And so it's his journey, and I thought that was really well done. So if anybody's out there wanting to watch something along those lines,
super resources like you're talking about, Case for Christ, award-winning author putting that together. And there's some other books, and basically kind of as I prepared for today, I kind of went back into some of the readings that I've done. There's a great book, it's an old book called Basic Christianity. And then C.S. Lewis did a great book called Mere Christianity. And all those books kind of help to give you that solid foundation. And these are scholarly people. These are people that have done a lot of work on it. But to me, when I look at it and I read the scriptures, you come back to these facts that, Jesus died on a cross. He was put in a tomb. And prior to that, we know that in the customs that they had, they wrapped his body, and they wrapped his body with the incense and all this. There's a very prescribed way that they actually prepared his body for the burial. Then they put this little small tent thing over his face. And then they went to that tomb, and with the Roman guards there, I mean, they sealed that thing up behind the rock so that, they did it precisely because they were fearful, or they thought that maybe the believers or disciples of Jesus would try to steal the body. And so the Romans did all kinds of things to safeguard that nothing would happen in that time frame. And then the scriptures tell us that there was no human way that anybody could keep the body sealed, that God in his power and might, the Father, raised Jesus from the dead. But it's interesting because there were people even in Jesus' time or in the time of the scriptures and also since that have kind of created some ways to disprove it. Like, the women went to the wrong tomb on Easter morning, or that really Jesus never really truly died, but he just kind of rallied and he got up and walked away, or that the thieves stole the body, or there's all these kind of things. And I think those are the kind of things that as Christians it's good for us to be aware of, and then we can present what we know that kind of gives a whole different, gives what I would believe is the true story about that. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Right. I think the fact that the only explanations that they have to disprove it are that he was not dead, which if you know anything about crucifixion, there's just no way. And everything that they did to him along the way, like that's just not feasible. There's no, thieves didn't steal the body. I mean, I think there wasn't a good enough reason to not believe it. Plus, in those times, they didn't have like billions and billions of people. So I think they have 500 people in one encounter saw him alive.
Yeah,
Obviously looking better, but still had the holes in his hands, the scar on his side, and then that time 500 people, it wouldn't be like some hallucination, which I know that's another explanation, but that's a lot of people to say the same thing, and so it was believable. And then we talked about how after they saw the disciples, especially, they were all doubtful. And then they actually, Thomas was talking with them and he didn't believe it. And Jesus came up to him and made him touch his hand. They ate dinner. They sat down and ate with him so that he was physically consuming food like a human would consume food.
Absolutely.
And then after seeing him, they went on and went on to tell the world about him. Absolutely. And they were persecuted and they were killed and they were martyred for their faith. And there's no way anybody back then would have gone through that kind of death for something that they didn't truly know happened. Absolutely. Why would they lie? Why would they not? Why would they put themselves through that over something that wasn't true? It didn't make any sense because, I mean, they wouldn't do that.
I mean, under the pressure of I'm going to kill you. Mm-hmm. Are you gonna try to keep a lie going? No, you're gonna, I mean, that would be crazy to do that. So I think that there was just that sense of clarity in those disciples' minds that he truly, truly was alive. I'm amazed at the places that the New Testament writers kind of verify that, because you have on Easter morning, Mary goes to the tomb. She sees that the tomb's empty. She turns around. She thinks it's a gardener, but in effect, it's Jesus. He then appears to the disciples, behind closed doors. Like you said, then on another occasion, there was Thomas who didn't believe. And so Jesus showed up kind of in a special time just for Thomas to be able to witness him. I love the story in Luke about at the end where there's these two disciples that are walking from one town to the other, and this stranger kind of comes alongside them. That's just a phenomenal story to me. And how, as they're sitting down, they break bread, and all of a sudden the light comes on and they realize that it's Jesus. And he begins to tell them how this all fits together. I mean, I just find that so phenomenal. And then, like you said, 500 people, witnessed him. And then between his resurrection and then when he went back to heaven, you get the feeling that he had lots of time that he was spending with these guys, pouring into their lives, helping them. And so I'm with you. I think that those are all really valuable ways to help me establish my own faith. And I think that's part of it too, is that for you and for me and for people that are listening, we do have to kind of gather all the facts, and we have to make the call if we want to believe that Jesus truly did rise from the dead. But I think that there's enough evidence, don't you, that just supports that.
And then absolutely. And then when you read these books, you have to, you're reading them like a history book too, because you hear about Roman emperors. So like you can read a history book and learn about, like, we didn't talk about Paul, like the conversion of Paul.
Yeah.
Paul was a Roman soldier. He was a persecutor of anything related to the church, early church. And after he saw Jesus and Jesus appeared to him, he converted and he became, one of the, I don't know if he's the biggest or one of the biggest, but one of the larger authors of the New Testament, sharing his story, sharing his faith, getting, flogged, eventually beheaded by Nero. So like these things are happening. Like people believe in these Roman emperors. They need to also believe in these people that existed with them. And so it just kind of comes together. It brings the whole story of that together. So there's just too many conversions, but
So let's just, it could be a historical event. I'm going to sneeze here on live. It could be a historical event, but at the same time, it requires an individual to embrace it for themselves, right?
Right.
So how did it happen for you? Or what would you recommend if there's a young person and they're kind of wavering about whether this is legit or not, and they're trying to sort that out? What would you say to them that would call them to consider that this is true, that Jesus truly rose from the dead?
So first, I think, we may need to re-record after I say this, and that's fine. But like, even if you have doubt on that aspect, it doesn't mean you can't have an encounter with Jesus.
All right.
So people will go into learning about the faith and learning about Jesus, learning about that relationship, what he did for us, what it means, who he is, without fully believing. I don't know that I fully believed everything in the Bible until I had the encounter, and then I went back and read it, and now I believe the things that happened. And so I think you can go forth in your faith without a full belief in that. If you're struggling with that, you don't have to be like, well, first I must believe this, and then I must believe this, and then you can have a relationship with Jesus. There's not like that order of events. So that's the good news, right? The good news is he did it, whether you want to fully believe it or not, and he'll still have an encounter and a relationship with you if you're not fully there yet. So
I would just jump in real quick and just, you could affirm that what I'm saying is right or not, but the whole idea is that you don't have to have it all figured out before you put your faith in Christ.
Right.
That sometimes he encounters us, and it's in the encounter with him that all the pieces fit together, or we encounter him, and then as we move forward with him, he brings all that together. Is that how you would kind of sum it up?
Exactly. And it's probably going to be one of two ways, right? Because a lot of people will have the encounter first and then go back and study what happened and believe it. Whereas if you look at like Lee Strobel, he wasn't about to have an encounter until he could believe it. He had to prove every step of the way. And great movie, not enough time to talk about it, but how in depth he went into his research and flew all over the world talking to all sorts of doctors and historians. But there's two ways to look at it. So that's the good news, is that God's going to create a path for each individual on how to get there. There's not just one right way, which is the best news ever.
And I think if somebody's open a crack, God's going to take whatever willingness we are to be open, and he's going to help inform us or bring light into that. And so if it's going to be a wide one or a small one, whatever we offer up, God works in that. And then I think the challenge is are you willing to allow the insight that you get from God to help change your mind or your behavior. I mean, you could take a business person, you could lay out all kinds of facts about how that person might be doing well or failing, but if in their minds they think they're doing it right and they're not going to change, then you can't get through to them. And so there has to be that willingness, doesn't there, to be open to listen to God's voice or the circumstances that God brings in our lives, right?
That seems to be a common theme in all three of our talks thus far, is that as we start to learn about the Bible, as we start to learn about this guy Jesus, as we start to learn more about the resurrection, and we'll talk about the power of the resurrection and the impact of the resurrection. This is just the actual event, but that common theme in all of this is just to have some kind of openness, have some kind of open mind, open heart. Like, don't go into it cynical, go into it, with an open mind and an open heart, and then God can use that cracked door. So I love that has come up literally every time we've talked.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it really has. I just reminded of the story that Jesus tells, that parable about the soil, that the gospel or the good news, the idea of the resurrection gets tossed into people's lives. And at whatever level a person's willingness to receive is how they then will, in their response. And so some people that may not be real receptive now, we just have to pray that at another point in their lives, they're going to be more receptive, and life circumstances will make them more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just kind of open to, hearing and making a difference that way. So I think that's really cool. Well, I'm going to bank my life that Jesus rose from the dead. How about you?
Same. Yeah, same. I'll bet it all. I'm all in.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the other thing, that another one of the kind of the reasons is that throughout history, way back in the time of those disciples, but all through history, there have been men and women like you and I who have said, we're banking it all on Jesus, and it's made a huge difference in their lives and families' lives and the world. And so I think we're in good company.
Right. I think that's a good point too, though, is like, who are you learning it from? That's a good point. Never thought about it that way,
Yeah.
People who a trusted source, and why does this person believe in that person's encounter? And that's the power of testimony, which I'm sure we'll talk about in another time, but absolutely.
So I hope people will enjoy our chats. And next time we're going to get together, let's talk about the power of the resurrection, the impact it has on our lives and on other people's lives and on the world. How's that?
Yes. And I think I already need to interject a correction that I don't know what award Lee Strobel was, but I think I said something Nobel Prize. I don't think that's what it was, but I'll insert that correction right now.
All right. So
we're good. And
in the notes, you can decide, can put not, but we're saying not Nobel, it's something else, right?
It's something else, but something.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, listen, go have an ice cream cone.
Yes.
All right. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.
Bye.